Because to be a perfect wife doesn't mean you have to say yes all the time. And what we're not realizing in a lot of these marriage circles is that when you say yes against your will a lot of times in a row, you're gonna resent the person for asking for so much from you. So you have to signal, and you have to be direct, and you have to be honest about when something is too much. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin and I run the blog called Mrs. Midwest. Welcome back to my studio, my closet, the new recording space in the new house. If you haven't yet checked out my most recent vlog, you'll see a lot more of the house in there. I hope you are all having a wonderful summer. Today we are going to be in more of a joyful headspace than our last commentary video. This video is a lot more advice focused, reflection, general tips, thoughts, this time on marriage. And I'm in a very good, joyful, happy, peaceful mood because we're talking about 7 things I've learned in 7 years of marriage. That's right, your girl had a 7-year wedding anniversary at the end of July. We went out, we went to a super fancy dinner. I think it was like the most expensive dinner we've ever done. I got to dress up. It was so amazing. I surprised husband with a gift. I got him a fancy watch. It was great. It was just like so classy, so grown up. And we just reflected during that dinner on everything we've overcome, everything we've been through in the last 7 years. And it got me excited to make a video for you guys about 7 pieces of advice, or just 7 things I've learned, 7 things I want to talk about after 7 years of marriage. But before we dive in, I did want to kind of talk about why I think videos like this are important and why I think they have a place in the culture. First of all, this isn't like a tip, but just setting the stage. I am not a person who's like a marriage at all costs kind of person. And what do I mean by that? Well, as I talked about in my recent commentary video, there's a lot of intense voices in the homemaking traditional community online. And I think sometimes when people see my content recommended along with other people's, or they see we follow each other, things like that, they might think we agree about everything, and we don't. And in fact, my perspective on marriage is heavily colored, first of all, by my faith, but also by my personal experience. And I'm the first to say that people who have no business getting married should not be getting married. Men who don't want to be husbands, women who are just settling. You know, I don't think we should be pushing young marriage for the sake of marriage. I don't think we should be pushing marriage, like rushing into marriage in your 30s just for the sake of getting those babies out there into the world. I really feel marriage is sacred. It needs to be taken seriously because, you know, it's something God designed, but also because marriage makes you extremely vulnerable to the whims of another person, as I talked about in my commentary video. So me, on the end of 7 years of marriage, it's gone really well. We've gotten closer. We're each other's best friends. Like, I want to make this video because we have actually a really healthy, good marriage, and I think I can have something to offer. But if I married the wrong person, or I just settled, or whatever, maybe these 7 years would have looked a lot different, a lot more painful, a lot harder, a lot, just bad. And I know a lot of girls who come to my channel, maybe this describes you. You want to be mothers, you want to be homemakers, you want to be married, you want to be in a relationship. So maybe you are going to settle, or you're going to push for the wrong relationship, or you're going to just kind of squeeze things in where maybe it's not meant to be because you want those other things that you can't get without marriage, like being a homemaker, being a mom, etc. And now, even though I've walked that path, I do not encourage people to enter marriage just to get those things. Okay, does that make sense? I saw this video recently and I've seen it kind of circulating in my community a little, and I totally agree with it. It's, I want to be a wife, not a wife. It's basically the concept of, I want to be like this in this romantic love. I want to be in this companionship, this friendship, this working together, wonderful marriage. I want to be that kind of wife versus wife, where you're like servitude, struggling maid, you know, just being like forced by the in-laws, you know, to do things you don't want to do or whatever. And I think our community as homemakers, especially online influencers in this space, we get wrongfully attached to that second version of wife that people are afraid of, that people avoid marriage because of, that people, they think, oh, marriage is oppression because they picture that version of wife, where you're like a maid for your husband, you have no autonomy, you have like consent doesn't matter, like things like that. The marriage advice I'm giving you today is to have the end goal and the end result of that happy, cherished, beautiful relationship. Love based on mutual respect, consent, the fruits of the spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If you've watched my channel closely, you know that that's always been my motto, okay? That's always been my goal. I love women. I want us to end up in positive situations that are life-giving, because when women are thriving, their kids can thrive, and those kids can grow up to have wonderful lives and not be traumatized by their childhood. So that's might sound like a tangent, but it's not. What I'm trying to say is I'm making marriage videos online for positive outcomes for women. I don't desire for people to get married to bad men. I don't desire to just prop up bad husbands. I don't support marriage at all costs, okay? So that's the framework where we're working from. We're working from a framework of getting all of you, hopefully, into relationships, if that's what you want, where you're cherished and taken care of. And I can sit here, and I don't have a perfect life or a perfect relationship, but I have a really good life and I have a really good relationship and I feel cherished. And like I said in my commentary video, look at me in my pink closet, full glam. My husband's watching my kids right now so I can come talk to you guys. I am being taken care of and cherished. So my goal is not just to feel amazing in that first year of marriage or to enjoy the honeymoon stage. My goal here today is to talk about dynamics that foster good long-term results in marriage, because in 7 years you can fall in and out of love with someone. A lot can happen, a lot of hurt can happen, a lot of happiness can happen. It's just life. I highly encourage people to walk into marriage with eyes wide open. That's kind of how I even approached birth. I kind of expected like, okay, a lot can happen here. And I had a good mental state, because if you've watched my birth stories, a lot did happen, a lot of bad stuff. But I was kind of mentally like okay after all of it, because I never imagined it would just be rainbows and sunshine. And I walked into marriage with the same mindset, not like this is gonna be so hard, but kind of like with my guard up, like my defenses up, like, okay, stuff's gonna happen, conflict's gonna happen, how are we gonna handle it? How am I gonna carry myself through the stresses of life or the conflict or whatever? And having that mindset of just eyes wide open when I come into marriage was super helpful, because I feel like at the end of the day, we are always pushing and working towards more intimacy with each other. And that's really the goal here. And the goal of my favorite marriage book ever, The Empowered Wife, is about fostering intimacy and connection with you and your husband, because that's the person you fell in love with. That's the person you wanted to live your life with. So this video is not for people who it's like you're struggling with severe maltreatment in your marriage or mistreatment or dangerous situations. Like, this video is hopefully to help people with like your basic run-of-the-mill marriage with your basic conflict issues, okay? If you're in danger, if your life is in danger, your health, your sanity, you're being emotionally like mistreated, if you're being cheated on, that's a different video, okay? This video is more about you as a wife and like things you can do, things that I have done, that I feel have had a super positive impact on our marriage. So all that to say, I love women. I love you. I want you to be cherished and happy in your marriage if you choose to get married, because I want functional families in our culture, because that's so important. I could wax poetic about that forever, but let's just dive in. The first one, this is so obvious. Don't turn off the video. I still have to say this first point because it's so crucial and important to a happy marriage. Spend time together. Spend time together. I know that sounds like, duh, but honestly, when life catches up with you, when your careers get going, even us moving to this house, my husband has a ton more work to do with like the yard work. Me trying to get into shape, I have way more personal work that I like spend my free time doing. We have kids, that takes a ton of time. My husband's a deacon at church. I just joined a leadership committee for a women's program. Like, we are busy, but we prioritize spending time together. So I think sometimes after a lot of years in marriage, which again, that's the perspective I'm speaking from, we can sometimes miss what being married is. And sometimes I think when you look at your husband every day and you're like, that's my husband, like maybe your mind starts connotating like, and he needs to take out the trash, and he needs to go to work, and he needs to do this for me, and he needs to do that for me, and that's the guy that I sleep next to, and he's the father of my kids. Okay. But at the end of the day too, he was your lover and your best friend when you got together. And sometimes when I just pause and I view my husband as like my best friend, like someone to have fun with, someone to like be my companion, I just noticed like our dynamic gets a little more playful and it's a little more fun. Like 2 days ago, we were like biking to the beach like we like to do. If you watch my vlog, you kind of know my lifestyle a little bit more. And we just, we biked to the beach. We had a great time. We were laughing all together, just having fun. You know, we went out to breakfast recently, same thing. Like, I think sometimes when you can get caught up in the reality of life, you can forget that your husband isn't just your husband. Like, he's the person you're doing life with. He's your best friend. He's your companion. And I think fostering that dynamic by remembering, like, what's the point of all of this? You know, what's the point of building a family, buying a house, having kids, living life? Is it just to put food on the table or, you know, achieve things? Or is it to like squeeze the most out of life and the relationships God has given us? Lean on each other and support one another to like make sure we're cherishing one another. And I think having fun together and laughing together and being companions is an overlooked element of a happy marriage, because like I keep saying, life is stressful. And if your only like infraction points are like, can you change the baby's diaper? Okay, I see you. I'm going to go to work, or I'm going to go work out, or blah, blah, blah. Did you do that? Did you do that? Do you know we have this on this day? That's like, okay, we're becoming business partners and we're maybe not even friends at this point. So taking time to laugh together, like sending memes to each other, watching funny videos. We start a TV show every once in a while just to like spend time together, and we share hobbies, and like that is kind of that underlying glue of we're always dating each other in the background of our life, because we're not like deprioritizing our relationship. Because without our relationship and without choosing one another, we wouldn't have this life. Like we wouldn't have these kids. We wouldn't have this lifestyle or this house or anything. I wouldn't even have this YouTube channel if it weren't for him. So I think getting back down to the roots of what brought you together and remembering why you're a couple is a lot easier when you're spending time together. That's why in a lot of vlogs you see me and husband are going out on a date or we're doing something, because that's a huge priority in our relationship and marriage. I think also like I'm a quality time person, and if I don't get like that friendship vibe, I'm not going to feel like close with my husband. I'm not going to feel passionate. I'm not going to feel eager. Like, as a wife, I need that emotional connection. And a lot of women are like that. And you don't have to spend a lot of money and go out to fancy dinners. We like to do that. We like to go on vacation, but we also just like spending daily time together. We take our coffee together in the morning. We interact a lot. We involve each other. We don't share like the same like taste in music, and we don't have the same sense of humor, but we indulge one another and we still are best friends. Like we still spend a lot of time together. And, you know, like I said, super girly room. My husband is the opposite of me in a lot of ways. We have a lot of different interests that don't overlap, but we genuinely like each other, and we genuinely like each other's personality, and we genuinely feel at peace in the presence of the other person. And I think that's because we value the companionship and we accept each other for who we are, regardless of our differences. I just encourage you guys, if you have a million things on your plate, don't push off spending time together. Don't push off the date or the vacation. Like save money for a vacation with just you two, or like bring your kids too, but make sure you get some like time, you know, have time together and prioritize it, because proximity is a helpful tool for maintaining closeness in marriage. And this isn't to say if you're long distance, like your husband's overseas or in the military, that your marriage is going to fall apart. Not at all. It's about the intentionality behind your marriage. A marriage where people are living in the same routine, both working from home, can fall apart if there's not intentionality there. And I think there is a level of vulnerability involved when it's like, hey, do you want to play cards with me? Hey, do you want to watch this movie with me? Hey, do you want to go there? Do you want to go here? there's a level of vulnerability involved because they always have the opportunity to say no. But I think when you're push yourself out of your comfort zone and you invite him to do things with you and you show that you're open and engaged and interested, they'll feel welcome in your life. And I think that's a huge aspect of friendship, is making sure that person feels prioritized and welcomed in your sphere of existence, while also just showing them when you are spending time together, you're not on your phone the whole time, like you're locked in, active listening, communicating, sharing about your day and stuff. I noticed I always get in like a super bad mood when my husband, in the past, when he would come back from like a solo trip, like he would go hunting or have a work trip, he'd come back and I'd be in this like really like foul mood because I missed him so much. But then when he'd come home, I was kind of mad that he was gone. And I was like, why do I do this? And I think it's because maybe I felt a little like disconnected from him and hurt, maybe even though it wasn't his fault. You know, I just felt distant. And so I didn't want to just plug right back in. So something we started doing is like when he's gone, we call each other on the phone like every day, and we spend time where he can like listen to the details of my day, no matter how mundane they are. I biked to the splash pad and we saw these people there, you know, just chit chat. I got this for sale at the store. And he listens to me and we foster that friendship, and it makes life a lot easier. So as a wife, I really encourage you to put your husband back as a priority, but not like as a husband, if that makes sense. Not like, okay, I'll wear a sexy like outfit and we'll have husband and wife like date night. Like, yeah, sure. But prioritize him as a friend, like as a best friend. He's your companion. Like focus on that as an underlying thing, where you're laughing together, you're making good memories. Good memories are so important. And you might notice like more of the spark coming back more frequently. Okay. Oh, lastly, like try new things together, get into new hobbies together, go new places together, like all of those new memories, like it creates these neural pathways in your brain where you're just like, oh, my husband's the best. I have so much fun with him. Like that's key. Okay. The second piece of advice or thoughts is don't martyr yourself. This is going to kind of tie in a little bit to some of what I talked about in my commentary video about advice I see online that drives me insane. And I am gonna, by the way, make a part 2 to that video, my video entitled What is Going On? So if you have thoughts or questions or whatever that you want maybe me to like think about or talk about in part 2, leave that under that video. But this topic is going to definitely be covered more in depth in a part 2, is the concept of the perfect wife and women who did you see that? Women who martyr themselves. Sorry, everything almost fell over. Yeah, I would fall over too hearing this topic that I'm about to talk about. Martyring yourself. What do I mean by that? I mean shooting to be the perfect wife at all costs, including to your health, your mental peace, your general capabilities to maintain a social life or physical fitness or a beauty routine that makes you happy. Just martyring yourself. And that is to say too, it's not your husband demanding this stuff of you, it's you demanding this stuff of yourself. And I think I might have even said in my marriage video 2 years ago that I used to kind of do this. Like I used to think, oh, the secret to marriage is to pick myself up by my bootstraps and be as hardworking and beautiful as possible, and then nothing can fail. That's not true, because as we know, many men are married to women who don't lift a finger and they're happily married. And so it kind of like debunks the idea that you need to work so hard around the house. You need to work so hard on being the perfect mom, being the perfect wife, and that will equal a happy marriage. Not true, because you being perfect or not in those roles doesn't necessarily equal emotional intimacy, stability as a family, or general peace. What influences that? Personal satisfaction, personal serenity, and like a sense of being balanced. And it's really hard to be peaceful, serene, and balanced when you are stretching yourself too thin. God designed marriage as a safety net for the stresses of life, especially for those of you who are mothers like myself. if it was able to be done by one person easily and like low stress, we would not have the family unit as God designed, okay? He gave husbands for a reason, and being a single mom is really hard. If you've ever talked to one, ever spent time with one, it's really hard. So I really don't encourage us to be fostering dynamics in our marriage where we are essentially a single mom. So Caitlin, how does this produce a good marriage? Isn't this just like a personal growth topic? Like, why are you talking so much about me? Shouldn't we be talking about how to foster intimacy as a couple? Well, martyring yourself is not going to foster intimacy as a couple. I am talking about that topic right now, because when you are pushing yourself too thin, you have a little bit of a resentment deep down. You might say you don't, but you will someday, because you look at that man and you're like, he hasn't changed a diaper in 2 years. That's not cool. It's not cool. It's not cool to let your spouse take advantage of you. It's not cool to like run your spouse into the ground. The same way, like I heard this crazy story like 6 years ago that I've never forgotten. And it was someone whose husband was stealing scrap metal to sell it illegally to make up money for his wife's shopping addiction. Like that man would stop at nothing to give his wife what she wanted. Like this was a local story. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then always stuck in my head as an example of the opposite, like where the wife is like mistreating her husband. Now, I encourage us to not do the female equivalent of stealing scrap metal to support your husband's problems. And what I mean by that is don't break yourself down in the pursuit of making your husband's life so easy he doesn't have to lift a finger, okay? Don't make his life so easy that he can never be your hero. He can never help you. Because when we're talking about resting in our femininity, a key component of that is not being overworked. And I think sometimes people get their wires crossed because it's like, oh, I want to rest in my femininity, and being a mother is one of the most feminine things you can do. So I'm going to be a perfect mother, and I'm going to be the main person in my kid's life and do all the stuff because I'm mom and that's my role. And the thing is, doing that will drain you, it'll exhaust you, and it will leave you having like an imbalance in your relationship and marriage. If you are stressed and if you are martyring yourself in your marriage, i.e., like essentially working yourself into the ground for no reason other than to be the perfect wife, stop it. Stop it, because it's not worth it. It's not going to result in closer intimacy with your husband. Maybe you'll get pats on the back from other women or like a little gold star. But I would rather be rested and have that be my reward than some person being like, oh, she works so hard, bless her soul. I get criticism sometimes because my husband helps me so much, but I feel close with him. I feel cherished, I feel taken care of, and I do not feel pushed beyond a reasonable limit as a human being. And that's a wonderful gift. I pushed myself, and it was super hard when I was pregnant and I didn't have a choice. I had a medical situation happening to myself, and then I had to heal from it, and then I got pregnant again. I have put in a lot of work as a mother. It is okay to step back sometimes and let my husband put in a lot of work as a father. I noticed that my life and marriage got measurably more positive and better when I started letting my husband help me. And I was forced into that because I was so out of it after the birth of my first child. And so much was going wrong. And then I had medical issues with my second pregnancy. And I physically could not do what I used to do. I couldn't like do YouTube. I couldn't clean the house like a maniac like I used to. Couldn't bake a cake and do all this stuff. Couldn't even walk around town. And I had to rely on my husband to take care of my newborn. I had to rely on him to take care of me. And that showed me so much that he like would protect me and cherish me and take care of me when I needed it the most. And I think sometimes if we present ourselves as too, like, I don't want to say capable, but kind of like independent even in our marriage, our husband might just take the cues and sit back and not take care of us. And I don't think we need to be little children or babies in marriage and just have our husband, do everything for us. But I think a lot of women, especially as marriage goes on, you get through that adrenaline first few years of the marriage and the kids, and then you're kind of worn out, and it's like, why? And then you look over at him and he has his hobbies, he has his life, he's happy and thriving, and you're kind of like, well, why do I not feel that way? And I think I'm not trying to victim blame here at all. I think it takes two to tango, but if we're looking at what we have the power to control, which is ourselves, I think sometimes we as women can foster that dynamic unknowingly by taking so much off of our husband's plates, like beyond what makes sense, okay? So I really encourage moms, especially young moms, new moms, let your husband have time alone with the baby while you leave the house, or you go into your room and you take a long shower and do your nails. Make him an equal parent by pulling yourself out of the game a little bit more. Your baby's gonna be okay. And if you can't trust your husband to take care of your infant, you have larger problems at stake. Like, I don't think I would even be married to someone who I couldn't trust with my baby. And so if he doesn't know what to do, he can figure it out. That's the function of a baby. It will cry. Like, someone figures out what the baby wants. Let him do that. Let him help you. Say no more often. Say, no thanks. You don't have to say yes to every request from your husband, because to be a perfect wife doesn't mean you have to say yes all the time. And what we're not realizing in a lot of these marriage circles is that when you say yes against your will a lot of times in a row, you're going to resent the person for asking for so much from you. So you have to signal, and you have to be direct, and you have to be honest about when something is too much for you. That is your responsibility, because no one can read your mind. And passive aggression is an unhealthy, bad dynamic that can really make it tense for kids to grow up in. So if you're depending on your husband to read your silent treatment and glares to know that you didn't want to do something, your kids are gonna sense that. Say your husband doesn't notice, but your kids will. I've always said since the start of my channel, if you're mad about something, you need to either bring it up or get over it. If it's not a big enough deal that you can really bring it up, then you need to get over it. If you can't get over it because it's that serious, you need to bring it up. Okay, you can take time, you can think about your thoughts, you can sleep on things, but passive aggression built up over time creates resentment. And why am I talking about resentment so much in this video? It's because that's like the number one killer of marriage. If you are martyring yourself all the time, if you're like passive aggressive to him, and there's like this dark energy in your marriage built upon resentment, things are going to break down. You need to take that extremely seriously. You need to take your emotions extremely seriously. Cheating husbands aren't the only thing that break down marriages. Your own personal feelings and like insufficiencies or kind of the feeling of being taken advantage of, that can break down a marriage just as intensely as being unfaithful. And it is on you to communicate that with him. Yes, he should be smart enough to know to help clean this or do that or do whatever. But I have found in my marriage, the less passive aggressive I've gotten throughout our marriage, like I don't even do that anymore. Like I'm so direct now. I do sleep on things. I'm not brash. I'm not like, that gave me a bad feeling, I'm gonna attack you. I like make sure I'm not coming from a place of anger, nastiness. And then we bring it up and then we talk about it and we whatever. And it really helps hedge like a lot of resentment and brokenness and fighting and all of that, because I'm managing myself and my emotions. I'm not pushing myself farther than need be. Like I even had it where it's like, oh, hey babe, can you like drop me off here because I need to go pick up this vehicle from the shop or whatever. And I'm like looking at my messy house and my kids and I say, no, I'm sorry. And you know what my husband does? He goes and he finds a buddy to pick him up because he's a grown man, okay? Sometimes husbands will just ask and they'll ask and you can say no. Let's not blur consent in marriage. This extends into the bedroom as well. I see a lot of people flexing on social media about how often they give it up to their husband. If you know what I'm talking about, that's not a flex. That's weird. That's transactional. Why? Like, let's return to having intimacy, that type of physical intimacy in marriage, because you want to, because you feel close, because you're attracted to them, because you're feeling it. That's healthy, that's romantic, and that's how we are, even after 7 years of marriage. It's not obligational, it's not routine, it's not, what I'm getting at. I'm not going to go in deeply into that to preserve modesty and integrity, but I really encourage you to not martyr yourself in that area of your marriage as well. You don't have to, not to be the perfect wife, not for any reason. No. Consent in marriage, in the bedroom, obviously, but in other ways, consent to, no, I can't help you lift that heavy treadmill into the back of the car. You're going to have to find a neighbor or a friend. That's okay. You can say no. I think also I deeply love my husband because I don't ever feel like put upon or taken advantage of by him. And it makes me happy to be in his presence and to be around him and to just generally exist in a family with him. So it's important for you as a wife to know your limits and to know what you want and to, try to be generous where you can, try to be a giving person, but to also recognize you're human too. You're not perfect. You're not always going to want to do X, Y, and Z. You're going to need help sometimes. Sometimes I'm so tired. Like after I did my vlog, in July, whenever that was, I was so tired. I just went to bed early and my husband took care of the kids for the rest of the day because he saw I needed it, because I've never presented myself to him like I'm superwoman and don't need that. I think it can be shocking for some husbands when their superwoman wife suddenly can't take on the responsibility that she used to. If we've ever seen those hideous joking reels on Instagram where it's like the woman's in the hospital and the man comes in and he's like, so I take it you're not making dinner tonight? No one wants to be married to that goober. Ew. Like, if that's like the generations before us, let us kill that horrible trope. Even if it's a joke, I don't find it funny. I find it disturbing because so many women are in relationships where their men just view them as like a commodity to do work around the house for them or to pleasure them. And if you approach marriage where it's like, no, I'm an autonomous person and I don't want to do that right now, or no, figure it out yourself, which might sound harsh. It's not harsh. It's holding your husband to the accountability and standard of not being a grown baby. Okay? So yeah, don't martyr yourself. That's super long. So the next one will be a lot shorter. Third thing I've learned, have firm boundaries with family and expectations that serve your well-being and peace. So expectations like with family. We've, bumped some bruises throughout the way. Everyone does with their in-laws and stuff like that. And we just have a super firm boundaries, with who handles what. My husband handling, his family. And we have boundaries over holidays, like what ones we want to spend with family, what ones we don't. But we've also gone from kind of not seeing family a ton to seeing more of my side of the family. And we've benefited from the community that's offered. And so in this part of the video, it's short, but I just want to stress, a lot of people talk about boundaries with family in successful marriage videos, and I agree with that, but I also want to encourage you to include family where appropriate, because family is different than friends. They grew up with you, they know you, you can just be your unfiltered self around them, hopefully, if it's a healthy dynamic, where you can just relax and enjoy life, and that can be really helpful for community support, especially after you have kids. Including family is just so crucial to us. That's how we get our vacations, because my husband's parents are amazing and they come watch the kids, and we've maintained a good relationship with them over the years because we have healthy boundaries, and I feel cared for by my husband when things crop up with family, and protected, and I think that's really important. Don't just be like, oh, well, I'm the woman, so I guess I have to answer the scheduling stuff on behalf of my husband. We don't do that. My husband takes full responsibility when it's time to schedule things, and I'm not like the family scheduler exclusively. We also used to have a problem where my husband, he's super extroverted, so he would just like invite people over willy-nilly, or he'd say yes to any invitation. And we had to like tussle it out and create boundaries and kind of share from both points of view. And I moved a little to become a little bit more sociable, which was honestly good for me. And he became a lot more mindful that my feelings as his wife kind of trumped the feelings of random people, including family. And I think that's important. Leave and cleave is a Christian concept of now that you're married, it's you two against the world. Okay? Love it or hate it, a lot of boy mom vibes and mother-in-laws don't like that, but that's how it is. When you get married, you separate off and you're your own family unit. And sometimes that means, okay, we're having Christmas, just us, or you can't talk to my wife that way, or whatever. And it's important to foster those dynamics. And that's another area I think where a lot of resentment can build up if it's not handled well. And this doesn't mean like cutting out all your family and being aggressive. It really doesn't. I think restorative relationships should always be a priority, but just recognizing how is this dynamic influencing my husband or my wife? Because I also think some wives can be overly close with their sisters or mothers and kind of relying on those people for support over their husbands. And maybe that's harming or damaging your marriage. I'm not familiar with that concept. I'm not familiar with that dynamic, but I've seen it. That falls under like leave and cleave as well, where you have to look at yourself as a wife too and be like, okay, well, I want him to stick up for me against my mother-in-law, but do I stick up for him against my mom? Think about it. And also try to like respect boundaries in your marriage. Don't tell your mom and your sister all the details of your marriage. Keep things private. Whatever you wouldn't want him sharing with his like family, maybe offer him the same grace and protection, because as I keep saying, like leave and cleave, that's super important. We are gonna I took too long on martyr, so we're cruising past the boundaries, but you get what I'm saying. My next thing is, I think this is the fourth thing. Don't stop discovering who you are as a person just because you're married. This goes along with kind of don't martyr. It's your inner femininity and peace that often draw a man to you. That ability to be fun and make, like I said earlier, make memories together, be happy. And yes, having a clean house makes it easier to be peaceful. Having well-groomed, well-educated children makes it easier to feel good. But also you matter as a wife. You matter. Your general self-care matters. Your ability to sit back and work on your hobbies or work on yourself or just have your own thing going on matters. I think it's so important to not center yourself around your spouse. And yes, you are one flesh. Yes, my husband's like the leader of my marriage, but we're not codependent. And I think that's like a really important thing that doesn't get talked about enough in the Christian marriage circles. It's that we don't need to be basing our happiness and our identity on our spouse. When we look at marriage, people look at maybe the sex within it or the dates you have or the time you spend together, and they calculate that as to whether or not it's a successful, wonderful marriage. My viewpoint is a lot more holistic, where it's you both as individuals and how much you're thriving, how you cherish and respect each other, but then also the surrounding support systems you have that also help and encourage your marriage, whether that's a strong workout routine or a strong church or friends or a job that you don't hate. That stuff all contributes to the ultimate happiness you will find in your marriage, whether or not you realize it. So don't stop discovering yourself. Friendship and community support your overall health, like maybe not as much as a good marriage, but it really helps elevate your life in general, and anything that elevates your life in general will make everything feel better. You'll be happier in general if you're not relying on your husband as your whole like sole focus of entertainment and happiness. I've met people who like won't even go to a coffee shop unless their husband can go with them. Like, I get being shy, but I also think it's crucial to grow up and to spread your wings and to not feel trapped, because yes, you can be trapped in a marriage by a bad man, but you can also trap yourself without realizing it. We all have, funding issues at different points where you can't afford to go to the coffee shop every day, but you can take a walk, you can go outside, you can make friends. It's really important to not have your husband as your main reason for existing. We see a lot of warnings too about don't idolize marriage. Don't idolize your boyfriend. When people are single, and it's okay, cool, but what about instructions to wives to not idolize their husbands and to not depend on him fully for everything? I've met people who are mad when their husband has a hobby, or they're mad when their husband has friends, and it's the solution to that isn't to get rid of your husband's hobbies and friends. It's to get hobbies and friends of yourself, and not in kind of I'm getting back at my husband kind of way, but in a way to like lead a healthier life. It's not good to not have friends of your own. It's not good to have no interests of your own. Don't shrink yourself down. This does go along with martyrship in a way. But really what I'm encouraging you to do is to continue discovering your talents yourself. That's what we do when we're like 13, 14, 15. You know, I used to design clothes in this sketchbook. I would draw dresses every single night. I would read mystery novels like Nancy Drew, play computer games, be on sports teams, singing teams, praying teams. I had so many friends. And now, as an almost 30-year-old woman, I do art. I play video games. I cook and bake. I spend time with my kids. I bike around town. I walk, and I have a lot of friends because I'm never going to give up on the journey of exploring everything life has to offer. And life has more to offer than just a husband. He is a wonderful aspect of my life. He's not all of my life because I also gain enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment from my interests and my hobbies. And when I do that, I don't feel resentful that he has jujitsu throughout the week. I don't feel mad that he wants it. He's going on a hunting trip in a couple weeks, months. And I'm like, cool, I get to spend a lot of time with the kids. It's going to be great. I just think it's really important to grow as a person. And I know it's hard to make friends as an adult. I do. But I also know there's a lot of resources for moms, especially with your local church. There's a lot of ways we can like gain community and support. And if you can't say friends is like lower on the priority list because it just doesn't make sense right now, you can always get into your hobbies. You can always form interests, learn more, take online courses, get back into your sketchbook, read again, go outside. Nature is number one for me. I love being outside. I just really encourage us to never lose that whimsical spark that I've talked about throughout my channel, the wholesome whimsical side of you, that femininity where you're like a little girl, kind of, where it's like you have interests and the world is curious and you want to learn and grow, and life isn't dark and it's not dependent on what your husband does or doesn't do for you because you're just doing your own thing. And a lot of the happiest wives I've ever seen are people who have their own things going for them. And sometimes I think that can get wrongfully misconstrued as like, oh, in order as a grown woman to have something of your own going for you, you need a job or a career. No. Sure, that can be your thing going for you, but to my stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home wives like myself, you can have things going for you. Like, I've taken time off YouTube. You guys know that this YouTube channel isn't the only thing going for me. I have other stuff too that makes me really happy. Also, when I was postpartum, I didn't have the bandwidth for a lot, but now that I have toddlers and like they're becoming older kids, I can do more and more and more. And now I'm working out and I have a lot more friends. Never stop growing, because that will always positively influence your life, and whatever positively influences your life positively influences your marriage. It's also, as a side note, really attractive to your husband when he has this woman who's just like bebopping around and she's happy and like living her life. I think sometimes there's like a temptation to present yourself to your husband like, oh, I'm not like other girls. Like, I'm not girly, I'm super low maintenance, I don't need that, I don't need this. And I talked about this in my commentary video, but that's actually not the move, babes. That's not the move. The move is to be yourself as much as possible, because you're gonna be the happiest then, and your husband wants to see you happy. I guarantee it. He wants a happy wife. Ask him today, husband, do you like it when I'm happy? He will say yes, I guarantee it. So whatever you do, don't shrink yourself down. Like I keep saying, pink closet. I get to live in my cute like yellow house with all this cute decor, and I get to like dress the way I like to dress and do what I like to do because my husband knows me. I didn't hide who I was in order to like fit some sort of like sexy goal, sexy like image of a perfect wife. I'm just me, and he chose me, so he gets to like have that. I married him, and he has duck hunting and like other things that I do not like or care for, but that's him, and I married him, and I accept him for who he is. So don't shrink yourself down. This next one kind of bookends that, another short one because I don't want this video to go too long. It bookends that. It's something I've talked about in a previous video where it's like there's like this test of like marital respect, happiness, and love. It's like you see a bird out the window, so you point it out and you're like, oh look, like a cardinal, and then your husband like looks and he sees, because you are interested, he's interested. So the concept of that is something, no matter how frivolous, should matter to you because it matters to your spouse. And this is a general framework of respect. And some of my other advice was about like you taking up space in your marriage and thriving individually. This advice is about him and how you can help him thrive and cherish him. So take a keen eye to your husband. Know what he does for work, what he gets up to. Ask him questions. I think it's important for you to be the expert on your husband, not to like become his dream woman and like isolate yourself from your friends and become a martyr. No. So you can cherish and love him, okay? Let's stop being extreme. It's about cherishing and loving. And I notice, my husband he's a words of affirmation person, so maybe it's a little more important to our marriage, but encouraging him, listening to him. Because also then when things come up where it's like, oh, I'm not sure about this thing at work, or I'm not sure about that, you can actually give reasonable, helpful, valuable advice because you know what's up. You know the dynamics. And I think sometimes we can skirt over this stuff when it's like, oh, we just have to focus on our husband's the leader of the relationship and you just follow him. And I think that just puts you way down here and he's up here. So bring yourself back up as equals. You're equals in your marriage and you should know about your husband, and you're not just some baby little girl following him around in your life. You're his best friend. That's the number one thing I want to drive home in this video. You're his best friend and you should be the expert on him. You are the professor on your husband's interests, his job, his like whatever. The way I would hope he's paying attention to you, but one of the ways to kind of foster the paying attention is pay attention to him, care about him, show him by listening, active listening. I've talked about this before in my marriage too, or videos too. Eye contact, nodding, smiling, taking time, shushing the kids so you can focus on him. And if you can't do that because they're babies, making sure you take time when the baby's sleeping or when they have a babysitter, whatever. That time where someone feels listened to and connected to you tethers him to you more than anybody else. And again, I don't think we can prevent bad people from cheating or bad husbands from being bad husbands. But I do think it's important to tether your husband to you tightly so that he feels cherished and loved the way you do. Because as much as you want him to notice you and to be your friend, don't forget that men have emotions too. Men have desires too. Men have like needs too. And I don't know, like I grew up with brothers. And so to me, often through my life, I've had an easy time like understanding men. When I was dating, I had an easy time connecting with them. Dates often went well because I always just viewed men as like just people. They have desires and interests and childhood stories too. And it's important to connect to people, not just like, oh, you're just a man. And it's important to realize that they have emotional needs too. Maybe they're a little less intense than yours, but they have emotional needs too. And so I think as we're growing together in marriage, it's important to never think, oh, I already know everything about him. Always ask questions. Just yesterday, I was like, do you like June, July, or August more? And that might seem like a silly question, but my husband had an interesting answer. He went into this whole thing about how after summer solstice, the heat changes from the sun. So he prefers August because the days feel different. And it was so interesting because I took time to just get to know him more. So as you're married for a long time, try to get to know your husband more. Ask him questions again and again, like about his childhood or interests or favorite things or what he thinks about this, what he thinks about that. Because we're not fostering a weird boss-employee relationship here, guys. We're fostering companionship, lifelong companionship. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's long distance. And it should be taken seriously, where you are studying the person you love and you're noticing changes. So I encourage you guys, take the temperature of your husband, his life, learn about him, become the expert so that no person can look at him and he can answer a question at a dinner party that like, you're like, wow, I didn't know that. Okay, my next piece of advice is to protect your peace as a married couple. Avoid stress. Don't compare yourself to other couples, even me and my husband. And avoid situations that could harm your well-being, like extended work trips that are unnecessary, financial strain, like a mortgage you can barely afford, ill-timed pregnancies, too many kids that like more kids than you can handle, too many responsibilities, saying yes to too many volunteer programs or extracurriculars for your kids or for yourself or helping too many people or, stress. As I've said since the genesis of my channel, stress is going to happen that we can't control, i.e. health problems, financial problems, but then there is stress that is in our hands. Saying yes to too many people, buying too much stuff, credit card debt, whatever, stuff that's your fault. avoid this stuff, because anything like that is going to cause extra stress on your relationship. It's not even internal stressors, it's external. It's coming from the outside, but it's attacking your marriage, and it's your fault and responsibility because you didn't have to go out and buy that house that's too big. Okay? So it's really important to clock stress, and if you can, get rid of it right away. We overbooked June and July this summer. Now, this is an example of like sweet, cute stress that's still stress. We overbooked June and July. We got together with too many people on too many of our nights off. We went to too many play dates, and we had a big vacation at the end, and we felt exhausted after. And it was like kind of creeping up on our personal peace. And whenever something creeps up on your personal peace, it creeps up on your marital happiness and conflict. And so we decided, okay, we're going to cut back. We're going to say no. We're going to spend more time just like resting at home, because the problem isn't each other. It's that we're stressed, and it fixed it really fast. We had like a few days of just like downtime, and we felt a lot better. So sometimes, like, especially having kids, that's a stress, for example, that you can't avoid, right? You can't avoid the stress that comes from having a tantruming 3-year-old, because a 3-year-old's going to 3-year-old. That's just how life is. But you can, so don't like look at your marriage and be like, my marriage is the source of all my problems because we're fighting. Because sometimes you fight because you're stressed, not because of your goings and on of your marriage, but because life is hard. And I really encourage you to not look at your husband as a stress, but as a companion and a life raft through the hard times. Depend on each other. Don't turn on each other. And I know that's easier said than done. And I think it's important to do kind of like stress tests throughout your relationship and marriage to make sure and ensure that you are each other's safe place and not the source of each other's stress. Okay, so a lot of this stuff, a lot of this advice, like don't martyr yourself, keep your own hobbies, encourage your husband to have hobbies, all this stuff is to help manage the stress that happens in marriage and relationships. My husband is my safe place. When I start noticing like animosity build up because I'm like feeling some type of way, I shoot it down as fast as I can because I want him to be my teammate throughout all of this life. It's a net benefit in life to have someone who cares about you. It's not just about sexual attraction or paying the bills. Like marriage is about having someone cheering you on and being like they're ultimately the person who cares more than anybody else about you thriving because they're united with you. And that's such a benefit. And I've honestly seen kind of some sad posts online, like on the millennial subreddit or other places where people are like, I'm 38 and I've been single my whole life and I feel lonely. And the thing I feel I miss the most out on in life that married people have is just that companionship, like that person who's rooting for you, someone you can come home to at the end of the day who does care about the goings on of your day. And that's why a lot of the advice I'm giving in this video is aimed at fostering a dynamic between you two where that's what's going on at home. Like you have someone who listens to you, you have someone who cares. Because it's kind of hard to care about the special type of chocolate chip muffin someone got at the cafe that day if you're secretly mad at them because they haven't helped you with childcare in a week, or they haven't like asked you about anything, or you feel stretched, you know? So all of this stuff works together, but ultimately it's to reduce stress in your marriage so that you can just have more peace. I do think we can lean on the Lord and have peace in hard circumstances, but I also think humans are sinful. And if we can reduce stress, it also reduces opportunity to have conflict and sin grow in a marriage. You should protect yourself from this stuff. It's not wrong. Like if someone was struggling with lust, you wouldn't surround them with pornography and tempt them and hope that they can get through it to prove how strong they are. No, you would protect them from their temptation. Likewise in marriage, I think if you have a lot of stuff pushing on you and pressuring you to resent and have conflict, like you have 100 responsibilities over there and the kids are driving you crazy and you have all this financial strain and you don't get any time together, why are you surprised when things start breaking down? When you give in to bitterness or conflict or whatever, quarreling? That's pretty par for the course. So if you can prepare yourself by surrounding yourself with less stress, by planning out your life as well as you can to be protected and safe, maybe you have to downsize your house, maybe you have to pick up a part-time job, whatever, to reduce financial stress, or maybe you need more community support. So you have to spend time going out and getting to know people, or going to church and building a network. You sometimes have to put in work on the front end to reduce stress in the long run, but it's worth it. That's kind of why I dropped off YouTube when I got pregnant with my first child, because I was like, I don't have a ton of friends, and pregnancy and family is really hard, and you benefit from having friends. So I'm going to spend all the time I used to on YouTube and vlogging and all that stuff. I'm going to go make friends in the real world. And it benefited me so much because you guys know I have a huge network now. I have upwards of 14 moms I could call up right now and hang out with. It's amazing. And that helps reduce stress. Okay, so I'm just saying, work on what stresses you out in life, because then when things get hard, like last year we had my husband's accident where he literally almost passed away, and then I got bit by a dog, and life was just really hard. We got through it because of our community support and because we were each other's best friends. I don't think we should marry just to avoid loneliness, but there is no denying the benefit of having a person to walk through life with. We were having a hard time, after our child turned 3, it's just harder, tantrums and stuff. And I was Googling conflict in marriage and having a young child, because we were arguing a bit over how to parent said child. And I found a statistic that said something divorce rates increase by 200 or 300% when a child turns 3, your first child turns 3. And I laughed because I was like, it's because you're so stressed out and you can't divorce your kid. So you look at your spouse and you're like, well, I can get rid of you. And you think you're getting rid of the problem, but you're not, because the problem isn't your spouse. It's just the problem is the problems you're facing. And I think it's important to remember you're each other's teammates and you're going to get through this, and things pass. My husband wasn't injured forever. My kid didn't tantrum forever. We got through it, and being collaborative, open-minded, and not controlling in life, and open to a variety of possibilities to solve your problems is always a net benefit to reducing stress. Finally, the last thing, I'm not going to spend too long on this because it pretty much says itself, but you can be a cycle breaker in your marriage. I think some of us who maybe come from backgrounds with twisted marriages that we saw growing up, maybe you feel doomed that your life is going to end up that way. Or maybe you've even noticed yourself repeating patterns of a parent, and you hate yourself for it, or you don't know why that's coming out. Or maybe after you have kids, some of that CPTSD, childhood PTSD is coming out and you don't know why. I want to encourage you today that you can be a cycle breaker. Relying on the Lord, praying, and discovering healthy, positive dynamics has changed my life. And honestly, I saw a quote that's come up a ton in the last 5 years online, where it's all these glam shots. Maybe someone will make a reel where it's a glam shot of a girl walking by the Eiffel Tower in high heels, and it's I don't come from a rich family, but a rich family will come from me. And I think it's kind of inspiring, especially for people who maybe grew up in poverty. The idea that you can break the cycle of financial trauma in your family, but I think we can step out farther and have a wider lens and say, I don't come from a healthy family, but a healthy family can come from me. And I really encourage you to remember that. You don't have to replicate the dynamic you grew up in. You can give your kids a different life experience. And as you're going through your marriage, if you have a background with CPTSD or you come from a broken family, take a critical eye on yourself. Don't be hard on yourself, but just know that you might be more prone to negative dynamics that can foster brokenness in your family and in your marriage, and combat them. Prayer, community support, personal happiness, peace, avoiding stress, everything I've said in this video. But on top of that, maybe educating yourself on your personal trauma. Therapy, I found books really helpful. The Empowered Wife, I always reference it, was super helpful for showing me and teaching me more about healthy dynamics in marriage. But then there's also more personal books that you can have. I actually just pulled this off my bookshelf, 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. This is a great book because sometimes I feel mentally weak, if you have CPTSD or other things going on, you're I don't know how to handle life. yeah, that's good. There's also books, like say you had a parent with a specific personality disorder. There's books on that, understanding your borderline mother. There's books on narcissism, things like that can be really, really helpful. And then also the book, I've been reading it right now, that it's so good. It's called The Body Keeps a Score. You guys probably already know about it, but just educating yourself and realizing, hey, it's not your fault, the background you came from. But what is in your control is the future and the changes you put out into the world. And you can have a happy marriage. You're not doomed just because you didn't see it growing up or you don't really know how to go about it, you know? You can have that too. It's important to not be just resigned to family brokenness. So that is all I will say for today. I hope that was helpful. I'm not gonna apologize for these videos being a little bit longer. I listen to hour-long podcasts all the time. I'm kind of viewing like this new chapter in my channel is I'm just gonna sit down and spend as much time as I need to get through a topic. And if you want, use these videos like a podcast. Put me on in the background while you clean your house or you do your nails or whatever you want to do, because I'm here to hopefully be like an online friend to you. And I would also just like to say to everybody who has meaningful marriage advice that has worked for them, please leave your comments in the comment section below. People use my comment sections like a forum to discuss and have an open conversation on these topics in a safe place. There's some moderation there. We make sure people are polite and they're treating me well, because I don't want to be online just to be mistreated. But it is a place for you to express yourself as well, especially to everybody who has a different marriage dynamic than I do. We're always curious about how you're thriving and you're making it work. And I just want to, again, reiterate and say, I love you guys so much. I want you to thrive. I want you to be happy. I'm super happy right now in life. And it's not just because like, oh, we moved into this new house and I'm in shape. It's just happy. I still feel like I'm in love, and I still feel like this is all just, you know, I just still feel so grateful too for my husband. And I don't know if he's gonna watch this, but husband, if you do, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. And I truly feel like I owe all of this thriving to you. So anyways, if you haven't yet, please like the video. It helps the algorithm. You can find me on Instagram if you're curious about how I apply these concepts in my day-to-day life. Subscribe, join the feminine family. But in general, I hope you have a wonderfully blessed and cherished week, my beautiful sisters.